Excellent.
Uh, yeah. So, and then yes and no. So the International Society for Bipolar Disorder, like I said, a couple of years ago was very exciting because Shabani and Ian and Georgia did talks, and researchers came up and was really asking questions. This year was also cool because one, Keto Mojo had a booth at a conventional bipolar disorder conference full of
Cool.
psychiatrists. Yes.
Wow. Cool.
And some of them came up and were very interested. And I just happened to be hanging out with the Keto Mojo people because they're like my favorite booth and when some of my friends. So I happened to be there and I was able to answer some clinical questions about it. So I thought that was really good. And there was some researchers that were really kind of interested and curious. Um, and it was good. It was interesting. It didn't have as much traffic as we were hoping, but I think its presence there was really important and good.
It's huge.
And then there was a lot of posters about mitochondria at the International Society for Bipolar Disorder and metabolism. And so you could just see walking through the posters how the stage is set for the adoption and the understanding of the research that's going to come out or that is coming out. I had my poster, my little case study poster for bipolar disorder, and there was a few people that came up and asked questions about that. So that's published in the peer-reviewed literature in Frontiers in Nutrition. And then, but that said, there was also a situation. Well, it wasn't really a situation. That makes it sound, complicated. Situation. It wasn't a situation. It was a talk. It was a lived experience talk by a woman who had bipolar disorder. And at the end of the talk, I came up and I asked the question on the microphone. I said, if you had access to a ketogenic diet as a potential treatment, in your worst times, do you think you would have taken advantage of it or you would have tried it? And she said, yes, I was so desperate. I absolutely would have. And then she also expressed some concerns that it would be very difficult to implement, the usual things. And then it was really interesting because the doctor that was on stage with her, how do I say this? He made it sound like there was not an evidence base for this as a treatment for brain disorders. Like it was very clear he did not understand or had gone through the literature that it was used for epilepsy for 100 years. And I'm not even sure he was up to date on the ketogenic literature in general. So he kind of made it sound like we were going to potentially take advantage of these poor people who were desperate for treatment, right? So it was a little bit, I was like, whoa, so it was just very odd, but understandable because it's new for this purpose. And I totally get, I understand the want that scientists have for RCTs. I totally get it. That said, I'm going to go off on a tangent, so I hope that's okay. That said, I think it is an ethical issue to watch patients suffer with inadequate treatments for things like bipolar depression, waiting for an RCT. The medications that you are using to help treat depression and bipolar disorder are quite inadequate. Ask anyone with bipolar disorder. They are struggling and they are trying not to fall into the pit, right? And so why wouldn't, I mean, it's not like there's a complete lack of evidence base in the use of the ketogenic diet for neurological issues. And now there isn't a complete lack of evidence specifically in its use for bipolar depression and bipolar disorder. And, there's case studies and there's pilot trials. We have the stuff coming out of Edinburgh. We have Shabani Sethi's and co-author studies. Like there's some evidence base for this. So are you really going to put someone's life at risk because the suicidality in this population is quite high? Are you really going to hope that let this person suffer for the next 5 to 7 years while we get all those RCTs done until you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's? Are you really going to ethically take the risk that that person is going to kill themselves? With the suicide rates that we have for bipolar disorder, I do not understand how that is an ethical stance for a practitioner. When you have actual patients, mothers, wives, husbands, daughter, you have actually human beings suffering immensely, and you're going to withhold access to this information to them until you have your perfect RCT. Where is the medical ethics in that? And how is that even defendable? So that's what went through my body and my mind as that particular doctor was saying that. And that, we're on our way. And so I'm not worried about it in terms of the medical establishment eventually offering this. And I'm not worried about this in terms of pretty soon, I think everybody with mental illness is going to understand that this is a real viable option, and they just may or may not get it at their doctor's office, but they can pursue it themselves. So I'm not worried about it from that standpoint. But I am really kind of concerned about the lack of ethical conversation around this nuanced topic.
Those are exactly the sound bites we invite you on the show to get from you, getting you a little fired up about that. I'm thinking about, not only Lauren Kennedy West, again, we mentioned her, but also you introduced me to Sam and June. I hope I got their names right, where he dealt with bipolar for over 2 decades and also needed to lose some weight. And so they decided to look up what would be a good weight loss diet. They came across low carb keto, and all of a sudden his mental health is getting better. And they're like, well, what's this all about? And they almost got like backed in to discovering some of this stuff and finding you and reading Dr. Chris Palmer and brain energy and all these things, and asking them about, like, why don't you think this is talked about more? Why did you guys have to find this as a weight loss diet, and then do the research later on to say, like, oh, this has actually been shown many times to help with this? And I love their response. They like quite angry in the beginning that they were never told about this, because it's changed their lives. And they are the sweetest, nicest people who agreed to be on a podcast. They've never been on a podcast. They were awesome guests, incredibly kind and amazing. And like, when it gets down to that individual level, I can totally understand why you get so upset that more people don't know about this. Also, it's great that it's starting to get out there more. Both of those things can be true.
Yes, both are absolutely true. Yeah. Yeah, they're lovely. I really enjoy them. Yeah.
They're great.